Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Akshat Maini, and I'm currently a research assistant at the Institute of Chinese Studies, New Delhi. It is a matter of great pleasure to extend a warm and humble welcome to all to another edition of the ICS's weekly Wednesday seminar titled Japan's New National Security Strategy Reactions from Domestic Constituencies. Based on their reading of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Japanese strategic planners have considered that a similar conflict may arise in the Asia Pacific region and that it is a real possibility. This would have significant implications for Japanese security as well. This perspective is evident in the strategic documents recently released by the Kishida administration in December of 2022. These documents grant Japan the authority to significantly increase defense spending, acquire counter-strike capabilities, and prepare a defense force capable of taking the primary role in repelling aggression in the region. While the new security policies have garnered widespread support, a portion of this strategic community and the civil society disagrees with the government's interpretation of the regional security situation and its call for increased defense spending financed by higher taxes. They have put forth alternative proposals and raised questions about the underlying premises of the new security policy. The speaker aims to examine Japan's post-Ukraine strategic doctrine, explore alternative suggestions from civil society groups, and highlight the challenges that the Kishida administration will face when implementing these new security policies. The speaker for today's session is Dr. Shamshad Ahmed Khan, who is a visiting associate fellow at the Institute of Chinese Studies and assistant professor of international relations at the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, BITS Pilani, Dubai campus, United Arab Emirates. He has recently concluded his term as a visiting scholar at the Waseda Institute of Advanced Studies, Waseda University, Tokyo. He has been associated with various Indian and Japanese research institutes, including the ICWA, the MPIDSA, KO Research Institute, and the Japan Institute of International Affairs. He has recently authored a book on India-Japan relations titled Changing Dynamics of India-Japan Relations, Buddhism to Strategic Partnership, published by Pentagon Press. The session today will be chaired by Professor Shrabani Roy Chaudhary, who is a professor in Japanese Studies at the Center for East Asian Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Prior to joining JNU, she was a faculty at the International Management Institute. Her association with Japan began with the Japan Foundation Fellowship between 1996 and 1997. She has been on the Visiting Scholar Program to the Keizai Koho Center, Ministry of Economics and Industry, Japan, Policy Research Institute, Ministry of Finance, Japan, Kobe University, Nagoya University, and Keio University. Her recent publications deal with economic diplomacy between Japan and India-Japan relations from the perspective of the power dynamics in the Indo-Pacific region. She has, to her credit, 5 edited volumes, including Japan's SAARC Partnership, A Way Ahead, 2014, and India-Japan Relations at 70, Building Beyond Bilateral, 2022, The India-Pacific Theater, Strategic Visions and Frameworks, 2022, Japan and its Partners in the Indo-Pacific, Engagements and Alignment, 2023, followed by The Dynamics of India-Japan Partnership, Abe Era. Before I hand over to the chair, I would like to ask all participants to follow a few housekeeping rules. All participants shall be muted during the presentation. Questions may be posted in the chat box. Please do include your affiliation and name when you post your question. Alternatively, you may also use the raise your hand option during the interactive session. You shall then be called upon to unmute yourself and ask your question. I shall now hand over to the chair. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you, Akshat, for your warm introduction, and good evening to all of you who've joined us today. It's indeed always a pleasure to come back to ICS and which hosts regularly, scholars and practitioners who are involved with Japan. And I'm very happy that we have Dr. Shamshad Khan today, who's was visiting Waseda University during summer, and rightfully he's chosen to talk about the reaction of domestic constituencies with respect to Kishida's National Security Strategy 2022. For the audience benefit, let me run you through what is Kishida's regime looking like. Kishida took power in 2021. Late 2021, and even before he could sort of settle down at his job, he had the Ukraine crisis when he said categorically that what's happening in Ukraine can happen in East Asia, technically meaning the Taiwan crisis. Since then, he has in many ways trying to put the issue at the center, whether he is having a strategic policy, whether he is going in for the new policy, which he revealed in ICWA in March 2023, followed it by in month of June when they came up with an ODA charter, a new ODA charter, which is focusing on trying to create a balance, create an opportunity for the like-minded countries to come together to create a more politically stable and, as it says, prosperous zone of operation within the Indo-Pacific. However, domestically, if you have been following Japan, one would realize that Kishida's, agencies with his citizens have been crawling downwards, and currently it is at probably the lowest of the low, worse than what it was 3 months back. This is mainly because two things that has been consuming domestically is the fact that he's talked about a tax raise, which he's now reconsidering, but he's also needs to come up with an economic stimulus strategy, which he is proposing to come up in the coming session, which is to start on Friday. However, people have very little hope in it because of two economic dynamics that's at work. One is the inflation, which is crawling up, and the other is the fact that this whole issue of taxation and the alternative that has been suggested seems to have fallen on a deaf ear. This is why I think Shamshad's today's presentation would be a real, good revealer of what is it that is happening domestically, in spite of the fact that Kishida seems to have found a place for himself through his G7 leadership, as well as other activities that he's conducting at the international platform, as a very committed, but as a leader with a very silent initiative. Over to you, Shamshad. We'll hope to have a very engaging afternoon today.
Thank you, ma'am. Let me open the my PPT.
Yeah, sure. Take your time.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's visible to all of you. First, at the outset, let me thank Institute of Chinese Studies and especially Elka ma'am for inviting me to give a presentation on this topic. And then also I thank Shrami ma'am for agreeing to chair my session. So as is visible on your screen, I would be speaking on Japan's new national security strategy, which is very much known. However, there are reactions from the domestic constituencies, which is not that known to the academia. So my emphasis would be to highlight the concerns that has been raised. So before I start, I will give a brief background of my presentation. I will start with taking the key takeaways of Japan's national security strategy based on my own reading. Then I will discuss on the premise of the new security strategies, what led Japan to think or revisit the previous security strategy that would figure in. Then I would discuss on what are the changes Japan wants to undertake in the change scenario and to meet the perceived security threat that Japan faces. Then thereafter, I would try to discuss a bit about the reaction coming from the domestic constituencies, especially the think tanks and academia. And then I will conclude by discussing a bit about the challenges that Kishida administration faces. Some of the point Shabni ma'am raised, so I will give a detailed overview of those things. So coming with my takeaway on the Japanese new security strategy is that there are 4 or 5 key takeaways. Number one is Japan has adopted a counter-strike capability. This was one bit controversial within Japanese, what you can say, domestic constituencies, because Japan, considering that it is a pacifist nation, it had been opposed to any kind of preemptive strike, any kind of action, or any kind of using the military threat uh, against against the neighboring countries. So Japan has has changed its previous policy of not attacking enemy bases. It says that in case the Japan faces a threat or attack, it will exercise its right to counterattack through missiles, and this is they call counter-strike capabilities. Then the second key takeaway is increasing the defense expenditure, which was limited. Earlier, Japan has a policy that it will not increase its defense spending more than 1% of its GDP. However, Japan has increased the defense spending, and now it says that it can spend up to 2% of its GDP. Basically, it is trying to link indexed the spending with that of NATO country. So it would be a huge expenditure, a huge hike if you see Japan's GDP, which ranks third as of now, third in terms of nominal GDP at the global level. So then comes Japan's in the new national security strategy. Japan says that Japan will develop its force such a way or to the extent that the Japanese forces can take primary responsibility for country's defense. We are aware that Japan depends a lot on US for its security guarantees. However, for the first time, the national security strategy has said that Japan will build a force by 2027 to undertake primary responsibility of its self-defense, its defense. And then lastly, which is my reading, is that for the first time, Japan has said that it will go use the US nuclear deterrence when it faces some kind of nuclear threat. And this policy has been initiated for the first time, despite there is a strong domestic constituencies which are nuclear allergic or anti-nuclear. And Japan, this strategy of relying on US nuclear deterrence goes against the Japan's existing non-nuclear principle, which says that Japan will not possess, produce, or introduce the nuclear weapon on its territory. So this is Japan has gone ahead and it has undertaken one of the areas which is nuclear weapon, through which it will use increase its deterrence. Some of the issues we'll discuss later also. So now coming to the premise on which the new security strategy has been based, or the pretext Japan uses to increase its defense expenditure, as well as upgrading its army or upgrading its defense forces. As we are aware that in the past, Japan has used external threat as an excuse or pretext to increase, change its security policies. So the premise remains the same. This time, Japan has used the Ukraine crisis as one of the issues which is likely to change or changing the global order. So it talks about Russia's aggression on Ukraine. And if you read between the line, even though it does not mention Taiwan, it says that similar kind of attack or similar kind of invasion can be taken in this region, and that would have a strong bearing on Japan's national security strategy, and Japan should prepare. So basically, they are using Ukraine crisis as one of the pretexts to increase its defense policy, as well as these 4 or 5 key changes that I have mentioned in this slide. So what you will, if anyone reads these documents carefully, he or she will find that the Russian threat or Russia's aggression or invasion on Ukraine has galvanized or changed Japan's strategic thinking. China and North Korea also remains a concern. However, China is pushed down to second position and North Korea to third position in terms of if you try to look at who is number one threat. So that is in the previous security strategy that was unveiled in 2010. At that time, China was number one security concern for Japan, and North Korea number second. Now it is the Russia which holds number one threat, and then you have these 3 countries. So as I said, officially Japan does not mention that who, when it says that similar kind of attack or aggression will happen in this region and Japan have to respond to it. The official document is silent or does not mention any country. However, in the Japanese strategic community, they believe that it would be Taiwan, or it would be China which will attack Taiwan, and Japan has to, because Japan will have direct consequences of a future aggression by China on Taiwan. So, and they are speculating, the Japanese strategic thinkers are speculating that by 2006, Japan will invade, sorry, let me repeat, by 2026, China will invade Taiwan, and this attack or this aggression would have direct consequences on Japanese security. So Japan is gearing up for 2026 scenario. You must have come across various reports that Japan is undertaking simulation, and it has planned scenarios where it will evacuate people from the outlying island closer to Senkaku, closer to Taiwan. So lots of discussion is going on. So then if you look into the security scenario, thereafter Japan plans, there is something called security challenges and security approaches. So as part of security objectives, security objective and security approaches. So as part of security objectives, what Japan has done, Japan is trying to prepare a defense force which can defeat any aggressor, and they will invest in increasing Japan's defense capability to such an extent that by 2027, Japan or Japanese security forces can take care of repelling the aggression. It will not need to depend on any country. Then Japan has planned to induct hypervelocity gliding projectiles and hypersonic missiles in its defense forces, which is not there as of now. Then for the missile defense system, it is going to deploy Aegis system equipped vessels. And then for the MSDF, Maritime Self-Defense Forces, it has planned to induct more vessels and frigates. Similarly, when it comes to Air Self-Defense Force, Japan wants to introduce more combat aircraft, and the ASDF will be revamped and renamed. It would be known as AASDF. So, major overhaul of its existing SDF, and the MSDF and ASDF would be the major beneficiary. Then, as I mentioned previously, that Japan would these frigates or MSDF or Aegis equipment destroyer that it is going to induct in its forces have to be borne by increasing the GDP cap on defense spending, and Japan plans to increase its defense spending by 2% of its GDP, so roughly 43 trillion yen, or around US dollar 310 billion. It will spend over 5 years, and if it goes on plan, then by 2027 Japan would become number 4 or 5 major defense spending countries. As of now, it is at number 9. So coming to reaction from the domestic constituencies, of course, this time, while the experts and strategic communities affiliated with government think tank have welcomed the new security strategies, new planning, as well as defense expenditure, the peace groups and the people working on academia, and war veterans have severely criticized and opposed Japanese government or Kishida's government's this policy. I have analyzed 2-3 reports which has been published by domestic constituencies or war veteran groups or independent think tanks. I'm giving just a gist because I know that we don't have much time. We have to cover everything within the limited time span. So when I was looking into various documents, I found that the one of the harshest criticism came from Okinawa War Veteran Group. So this group considers that Japan is overhyping the China threat, and similar kind of threat was hyped when Japan undertook, when Japan entered into Pacific War or World War II. Similar kind of a scenario the Japanese administration is building, and it's trying to spark and incite people's sentiment and it's using China threat and excuse to increase defense expenditure or upgrade Japan's forces. Then comes the another group, Heiwakoso Taigen Kaigi, which is Council on Peace Initiative. I have chosen only one paragraph. Of course, it is a detailed report. So it says that when Japan is increasing its defense expenditure, the defense expenditure will somehow affect on social security, and the expenditure is required on education and areas where people's life can be improved. And because of COVID, there is price rise, etc. So instead of focusing on these things, Japan is focusing more on real security realm, and it is trying to scare people to increase the defense expenditure and increase the tax hikes. So, and one of the most detailed report, or you can say counterproposal of new national security strategy, has come from Asia's Future Research Group. I was in Tokyo when they unveiled, and I participated in their deliberation when they unveiled this report and what they think about Japan's security strategy. They discuss threadbare among in presence of media as well as the scholars who came from different universities. So this group the questions the basic premise of Japan's security strategy. It believes that Japan has departed from its defense-only policy, and it says that Japan has, or Kishida administration has taken 180-degree turnaround in defense policy. One of the argument of this group was that, as I said, when Japan made premise of this newest security strategy is based on the premise that a similar kind of aggression or attack will take place in the East Asian region also. So this group says that Japan is trying to misapply lesson of the Ukraine war into Asia. So they say that it is too exaggerated that that China would undertake or invade Taiwan. So Japan should not read it too much. China is not likely to attack. So this is their view. And they say that as regards the counter-strike capabilities, which is still talk of the town, these experts believe that Japan should focus deterrence by denial rather than enhancing counter-strike capability because it is less effective and it have a greater side effect. So they believe that Japan is investing too much, but it is not going to be that effective, the counter-strike capability, rather than you should have built your defense shields. Now on Taiwan, which is very interesting, this group, the Future Security Group, talks that Japan should preserve the status quo until both China and Taiwan find a peaceful solution to the issue of unification. So instead of taking side of Taiwan, or instead of talking about Taiwan security, Japan should go for status quo, and rather Japan should Japan should pursue its strategy that basically it should influence the two countries to go for peaceful solution or unification. On Senkaku, it says that Japan should acknowledge that there exists a conflict. There exists an issue between Taiwan and China over Senkaku issue. When I asked them, they said that you should not. I asked them that do you think are you suggesting that you consider China as a disputed territory? They said no, it would be misinterpretation. We say that Japan, the Senkaku remains part of Japan's sovereignty. However, if China has any sovereignty claim, Japan should enter into dialogue with China over this issue, and should also discuss how to ease or resolve the tension over the island. Then on the issue of North Korea, this group is in favor of normalization of ties, and they suggest that it should start with establishing a liaison office in North Korea. And once this liaison office is established in North Korea, the issue of abduction of Japanese citizens by North Korean regime would also be taken care of, or could be tackled. So the finding or suggestions of Asia's Future Research Group is interesting. It is trying to address the root causes of the tension in the region, rather than resolving it through increasing the defense expenditure and other thing. So rather than containing or managing it, they suggest that the Japanese administration should go for a kind of should find out the root causes and go for solution. Management is short time, but solution will take long-term policies, and Japan should undertake these long-term policies. So now, as Ma'am was saying, that some of the policies that Kishida administration have thought to implement on, it is very difficult. It is becoming very difficult for him to implement, even though the resistance which I talked in the previous slides is not that strong that it will push the administration to change the policies that the administration has adopted. However, Kishida administration faces lots of you can say lots of resistance from the domestic groups, including the public, when it comes to increase the defense expenditure through tax hike. So one of the surveys which came to the fore, which I analyzed, it suggests that around 80% of people are against increasing the tax to shoulder the burden of the required defense expenditure. So, and considering that, and because of this high opposition among the Japanese public, what has happened? Kishida has announced that it is postponing the defense expenditure hike by 2025. So there won't be any defense tax increase, tax hike until 2025, because there remains a strong opposition in Japan. Then, as ma'am was highlighting, Kishida government is treating very cautiously because on the one hand, there is inflation, especially in Japan, high inflation in Japan, especially on the food items and edible items. So it is already burdening the people, common people. And again, if any tax hike happens, it will be a kind of a pressure on them. So government of Japan decided, or Kishida government decided to postpone it 2025. Now this 2025 is a scenario where if a snap election does not take place in Japan, is not called by Kishida administration, the term of the existing parliament will end around 2025, autumn 2025. So what the Japanese experts are interpreting from this delay is that Kishida wants to undertake the defense hike, the tax hike to cover the defense expenditure after the next election when he cements his position. However, not only the people, but the coalition party, which is part of the government, Komeito, is also opposed to increase defense, the tax at a time when there is people are getting affected by high inflation. The third point, which is what you can say, which is a challenge for Kishida, which Srami ma'am also mentioned here, was that Kishida government's approval rating is very low. It has gone, what you can say, it has dipped too much. Opposition disapproval rate is much high. And for any prime minister or any politician to survive in Japan, this approval rating is a kind of benchmark. If it goes down further, there would be pressure within the LDP to remove Kishida from the presidency, and thereby, if he loses presidency, he will lose the prime ministership also, which is the convention in Japan. So Kishida is unwilling, trying to undertake various measures to increase its approval rating, and he is in a 2020 catch-22 scenario where if he increases the defense expenditure or the tax hike, then it will be a double whammy for him. His approval rating will further plummet. In that scenario, it would be very difficult to achieve the policies that he has unveiled. So unless Kishida is not able to improve its approval rating, it is unlikely that he is going to implement fully. However, he is trying his best to incrementally implement the national security strategy, which he has unveiled. One scenario, what Kishida has done, it has order for Tomahawk missile from the US, and to his luck, this time Japan has some export surplus. So instead of going for defense hike, the tax hike to incur the cost of defense budget, he would use the money, the surplus money that he has gained through corporate tax, etc. So for the midterm, Kishida has some respite. However, implementing this strategy, or as well as implementing the 2% expenditure on budget, he has kept on postponing. So we don't know when it will be actually implemented. On that note, I would like to conclude. However, if you have any query questions, I would be happy to take up and answer a few questions. Yeah, over to you, ma'am. I think you are muted.
You can close your PPT, Shamshad, now.
Okay,
And,
thank you.
That will be. Thanks. Where's our chair?
Yeah, thank you, Shamshad.
Okay.
I got a few good data from your thing, especially the fact that, what kind of defense expenditures are happening. I don't see any questions on the chat box. Let the audience start warming up. Let me flag a few things for you, which would be probably interesting for people to know. When you looked at these domestic constituents whom you put forward, the Okinawa veterans, the Asia futures, you generally talked about, how they thought, why it was bad. But what is the alternative they're coming up with? If you could explain to us a little, that would be interesting.
Okay.
The other thing is, how is the opposition reacting to it? Like within the Diet. I suppose you thought there would be less time available, so you probably left that out, which would be very interesting for the audience to know.
So as of now, when I was reading the Okinawa veterans and the another peace group, they have not put forward any alternative. However, they are critical to government policies. They are saying generally that it is the education, it is the household spending that need to be taken care of, or social security. Their concern is that once a budget is diversified towards defense expenditure, it will affect the social security. So this is not the time, the COVID is not the time to hike the expenditure, and also the expenditure is unnecessary. But as I said, Asia Future Study Group has come out with so many alternatives. They are saying that you are misreading the Russian invasion on Ukraine or to Ukraine. The scenario is very different here. Taiwan is as the China claims. The international community also considered one China policy, and Taiwan is not a sovereign entity as Ukraine. So, of course, there is a war between them, but there has been in the past reconciliation effort from the cross-state, the Taiwan and China. So instead of aggravating their tension and saying that you will take part or you will assist Taiwan, you should try to push Taiwan or persuade Taiwan to go for reconciliation. So, and that is this thing. First, they say that this is two different things. You are equating apple with oranges. Just because an aggression has happened by one of the permanent member of United Nations Security Council in the Ukrainian theater or in nearby Russia, China is not going to do the same thing. That is exaggeration. So then when it comes to the counter-strike capability, they say that instead of going for counter-strike capability, you should build your deterrence, your defense shields, which is much more effective than selectively picking and attacking some country, and there would be both sides will enter into a kind of conflict and war. It will further aggravate the war rather than or conflict in the region rather than resolving it. So as I said, they believe that for Japan, China, North Korea is a concern, and these concerns can be addressed by acknowledging when it comes to Senkaku, that Senkaku is an issue. They don't say this bilateral issue is an issue which Japan and China should negotiate with each other and talk to each other. This is not something which should be brushed aside. So if China has some concern, you acknowledge their concern and enter into it. So basically their policy is which resembles with now I think Yukio Hatoyama, who was the prime minister during the DPJ period, first prime minister during the DPJ regime. He also had when after retiring, when this Senkaku sinisterization has happened and lots of things was happening in this region, he was the one who said that it is an issue between Senkaku is an issue between China and Japan, while Japanese establishment had brushed aside, saying that it is Japan's sovereignty and China has no business to talk about or inflate this tension on the region in the region over Senkaku. So and again, North Korea, as I said, they are in favor of normalization rather than some kind of confrontation with them. And they say that at least first step should be setting up licensing office, which could later, over the years, after eventual resolution of abduction issue, would turn into a permanent, diplomatic mission, and then you should normalize. So they believe that not normalizing relationship with North Korea is deepening the crisis between the two. So they are the Asia's Future Security Study Group has given lots of alternative also. A, they are critical. B, they have given alternatives which I have enumerated now. And regarding the opposition parties, as you know, most opposition parties are their space is shrinking. Few the another opposition, which is Osaka based, I'm forgetting the name of the party, has supported this policy. Only party which is left is the Constitutional Democratic Party of Japan. They made some observations, however, they were not that critical also. They did not openly criticize this policy. They say that they were of the view that some of the issues that Kishida is highlighting is not needed at this point. Security threat is not that severe to undertake counter-strike capability. It will create more apprehension among the neighboring countries, and it will escalate the tension unnecessarily between Japan and the neighbors. So, but they did not discard all the policies as such.
Okay, a few questions have come in, Shamshad. Some of them relates very closely to your work, and some of them are a little asking you to go wider. You can also see, I think, in the chat box, but let me, for the rest of the audience sake, say Akshat from ICS has raised a question. He thanks you for your informative session. The NSS 2022 makes it clear that Japan's grants priority to Taiwan. The preservation of the status quo with regard to China and Taiwan also highlights Japan's careful maneuvering around the One China principle. PM Kishida has taken decisive steps towards building closer ties with Taiwan, including the appointment of Minister Kinihara Minoru as the defense minister in the recently reshuffled cabinet, and Minister Haguida Koichi's recent visit to Prime Minister Kishida's efforts towards Taiwan play out within the LDP. Is he facing any major opposition within the party? And if so, how is this going to affect his government position in Taiwan? Let me bring in another question, which is pretty close to this. That is Abhijita from JNU. Does Koimeto's resistance to the defense expansion stem from the group's close links to China? What role does Koimeto play in preventing Japan from getting ready for a China threat? So I think this too would be very close.
Okay. Thank you, Akshat, for the question. I will address your question first. In Japan, among the LDP, there is a consensus over Taiwan. And even though Kishida's faction is considered a dovish, it does not want to antagonize taking dovish position to other factions of the LDP. If you remember, not only Haguda, which is the member of his cabinet, is part of his cabinet, has visited, but prior to that, it started with Shinzo Abe's wife visiting, Aki Abe visiting Taiwan. Then thereafter, you had Taro Aso visiting Taiwan, and it was considered support to Taiwan by Japan. So entire LDP has taken a unified position when it comes to Taiwan or China's perceived aggression or future takeover of Taiwan, etc. So they are unified in their response. So the Kishida government is not facing any internal resistance within the LDP towards its pro-Taiwan policy. Yeah, as you said, in the national security strategy, Japan says that is for the preservation of a status quo around Taiwan, on Taiwan. However, if you see US's national security strategy, it clearly says that it does not support independence of Taiwan. So there is the domestic constituencies were saying that Japan should also highlight this thing in its should have highlighted this thing in national security strategy, that we support one China policy. That there is that Japan has kept it bit vague when it talks about preservation of Taiwan. Now Abhijita's question about Komito's resistance. So Komito, of course, is not considered by some as pro-China. However, it's not pro-China. It is as you know, if you look at the structure of its member group, it is a party supported by lay Buddhist, which is Soka Gakkai. So lots of members of Soka Gakkai are they favor peace. They favor that Japan should remain pacifist. Japan should maintain its image of a peaceful country. So they also want Komito not to compromise with LDP's policies, and that's why Komito does not support lots of policy decision, or it curtails the policy decisions that LDP wants to take. For example, on the issue of this counter-strike capability, Shinzo Abe, when he was still active, he talked about it in 2006-7, and thereafter it took around 15 years to pursue the coalition partner to agree for Earlier, Kishida agree for this kind of counter-strike capability. Earlier, when Shinzo Abe was prime minister, and his cabinet wanted to include something called preemptive strike. Preemptive strike would mean that even if Japan is not attacked by a neighbor or an enemy, Japan would have a right to take preemptive strike. It is the Komeito which opposed this policy, and Kishida administration, when it comes to this counter-strike capability, because of Komeito's insistence, Kishida administration took a policy that this counter-strike would mean, they have clarified what is counter-strike. They said that Japan will not use its missile or its weapon against an enemy country or a rival until unless it has been attacked, it receives an attack from them. So it would be kind of response to first attack by a neighbor. So this policy has been diluted just because Komeito is there. However, Komeito is not pro-China. Komeito takes this policy because there is a constituency which supports, which wants that Japan should remain a pacifist or peaceful country. Japan should not be seen as a militarist country in the region. So to preserve that image, Komeito keeps pressurizing or keeps raising issues with LDP, and LDP tones down some of its policy. Okay, thank you very much.
You need to answer another two questions that are up there.
No problem, ma'am.
Yeah, one is by Kanishk, which how is the Tempest program being perceived? Are the Japanese only looking at it as one particular instance where the Japanese side would be giving way too much control to the West, or an instance that may conform to a larger pattern of dependence on Western nations?
I did not understand what do you mean by Tempest?
Yeah, Kanish, which could you please unmute yourself?
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, tell me, please.
Yeah,
could you reframe your question? Yeah.
The Tempest program refers to the joint venture where the Japanese, the British, and the Italians are working on, I guess, a sixth-generation fighter together. But there
yeah, I got it. So again, this program, of course, they have made a blueprint. However, it will depend on Japan's defense changes in Japan's defense export policies. Again, Komeito comes into picture. Komeito does not want to, because Japan had a policy that Japan will not share. From 1978, it has a policy that Japan will not export its defense and defense-related technology. That was tweaked down a bit in 2012 when Noda was prime minister, and it was made conditional. However, when it was made conditional, it should be given to. Japan agreed that it will revisit on the case-by-case basis, and it will allow its defense technology to be exported to a country with which it goes for joint production of the defensive weapon. However, now it was only when they eased the defense export policy. It was conditional. It was basically aimed at facilitating Japanese technology to the US. Now, with this Tempest program that you're saying, lots of new countries have been added, and Japan trying to develop a fighter plane. Recently, there has been a committee which has been established, set up by LDP, in which LDP will negotiate with Komeito within its cabinet, within its coalition partner. Once Komeito and LDP reaches to some kind of understanding, then only this kind of program can take off. Otherwise, there are various programs which are there in the pipeline. However, until unless Japan further eases its defense export policy, it is going to be it is going to be difficult for these programs to be taken up.
Thanks, Kanishk. We have one by Rappai Malaikal. He obviously thanks for the presentation. Which are the pressure groups for enhancing the defense expenditure? How big is the presence of US arms lobby? Any impact of ongoing problems in the West?
Of course, there are different kinds of pressure lobbies within Japan. As Japan has unveiled lots of programs to procure defense expenditure, it has increased its GDP. So lots of arms and ammunition companies who have their liaison office in Japan, they are lobbying with government of Japan or LDP to get fair share in the defense deal that Japan may take in future. Those kind of things is there. There's one lobby or one internal group that has been formed within LDP, which pushes Japan to undertake further arms export and buy more. So, but it is still at the initial stage. However, there is a lobby within LDP also. I was doing my research on that. There was a small report which suggested that LDP has created within LDP there is a faction which is trying to push for arms export. The Japan has some cutting edge arms related technology, which these LDP groups want to export to other countries, and they get some benefit. So, and then internally also when Japan has increased the defense expenditure, there are lots of defense and armament companies within Japan and outside of Japan, which are trying to gain from this defense budget. They want to push more arms and ammunition to Japan. So that is a normal business that is happening.
We now have two other questions waiting you. One is from Simran from JLA. NSS mentions Japan acquiring counter-strike capability and enhancing its defense posture, do you think Japan is in a position to give up its pacifist stance? And how capable is Japan of doing that? I will add this to Abhijita's question also. He says that Prime Minister Abe's implementation of defense policy during his administration been compromised by the Sevakai's inability to coalesce under a single leadership. So I think if you can take these two, and we have one
more. Okay, ma'am. There was a knock on my door by some of the students. I got distracted. So could you please repeat the question for me?
Simran says that, since you have this now mentioning of counter-strike capability in one end, and you have Japan's pacifist stance in the other, how do you think Japan is going to position itself because of this? And this is a little, of course, away from this subject. That is, Abe's implementation of defense policy during his administration has been compromised by the Sevakai's inability to coalesce under a single leadership.
Okay, I got it. So as regards this Japan counter-strike capabilities and the opposition from the pacifist or peace lobbies, peace groups, they tried their best, but they could hold it because this debate started since in 2006-07 when North Korea had been firing lots of missiles, which was passing over the Japanese territory. That time the counter-strike capability, preemptive strike capability was being discussed. So these policy groups, these studies group or these peace groups, they were opposed to Abe's policy, and they were successful in delaying it. However, when this Russia's aggression on Ukraine took place. The strategic thinking has changed a bit, and common people earlier when this kind of debate was, which debate took place 2006, 2007, 2010. Around that time, as I have been witnessing, a majority of people in the opinion poll oppose this policy. However, for the first time when Kishida administration has unveiled counter-strike capability, there were some 60% people who supported this policy, and so you can see a substantial number of people are supporting it, even though the peace groups have their own thinking. However, in Japan, the peace group or peace lobbies have been weakened over the years, and you can measure it from the number of seats the opposition party gains in the elections. It is seen now you have more parties even in the opposition, which takes the same position with that of LDP. So as I said, Osaka-based party Nippon Nation supports government policy on revising constitution, having more arms and ammunition, export of arms and arms-related technology, etc. So you will find that there is a greater consensus among the ruling parties among the opposition over this issue. The peace groups have been marginalized; they are less prominent in Japan over the years. There's generation gap. It is a different debate altogether. Why the peace groups are shrinking? However, whenever they make this kind of proposals, there are people who read to it, they listen to it. However, they are not able to. They are not, you can say, strong enough to push the administration to withdraw some of the policies which used to be during 1960s. It is Abe's implementation. Yeah, even though Abe is no more there, however, his associations, his supporters are there, and they continue to influence Abe's the LDP's policy. So Abe's faction remains the largest faction in the LDP, and the present prime minister also, and anyone who wants to gain the presidency of LDP would like to toe the lines of Abe's faction. Without Abe's faction, LDP or LDP's president cannot be elected. So lots of even Shinzo Abe, even Kishida supports some of the Abe's policies, and he has not withdrawn from quantitative easing and Abe's policy of Abenomics. Ma'am knows better than me, on that issue. So there is a compulsion for Shinzo, for Kishida or anyone who will become prime minister because of the influence that Abe faction, or because of the strength of Abe's faction. Yeah, thank you. Yes, ma'am. Second, next round.
No, you have one from Varuna. Going back to asking a very easy but a simple question, which has a lot of ways of handling the whole thing. Does soft power diplomacy of Japan gets impacted with this move by Japan?
Okay. See, Japan, I don't know Japan's soft power, we talk too much, but Japan's soft power image, soft power diplomacy has waned down. Earlier, Japan has lots of weight or lots of, you can say, influence through its soft power diplomacy, but it is waning down over the years. On the one hand, Japan talks about getting rid of nuclear weapons from this earth. It adopts resolution every year. Then again, it uses various cultural policies to influence people. However, on the defense front and on the security front, it is militarizing. So I don't know how to read Japan's soft power diplomacy. On the one hand, you are spending a lot on defense and expenditure. You want to become, you emulate the policies of global powers, and still you think that your soft power should have what value. It has lost the value. Okay.
Final question comes from Pooja.
Okay.
I think it is a good question which will wrap up this session. Considering how the conflict of Ukraine played out, do you think it has widened the trust gap of Japan on the West? Considering this, can we expect Japan's nuclear adventurism in the near future?
Oh, last point, conflict from the conflict point, what you said?
Conflict of Ukraine played out. Do you think it has widened the trust gap of Japan on the West? Considering this, can we expect Japan's nuclear adventurism in the near future?
Okay. First of all, Japan or Japanese establishment utilizes any policy which is taking place outside, let's say any threat, to increase its armament, increase to give more arms and ammunition to its defense force, or change its pacifist policy. Internally, it is very difficult because of the constitution, because of the pacifist, still sizable number of people who are pacifist, or some people who are for increasing this security or defense of Japan, but not to an extent that it can threaten the neighboring countries. So these remains a constraint for anyone or any prime minister who holds a position, who assumes the office. However, whenever an external security situation arises, we gave example of the conflict during the Cold War over Korean Peninsula, then Iraq war, how Japan changed its security policy. So it always used the external threat as a tool or as a pretext to increase. So this time, the Ukraine crisis or Ukraine conflict has given a fine, you can say, pretext for Japan to overhaul its security policy, for which it was gearing up for long. So I don't think that there is the trust which has, or the gap which has widened between the West and Japan. Rather, Japan has gone more closer to the West during the Ukraine crisis. So G7 has taken a unified position, and Japan hosted G7 summit, as you are aware, in Japan this year. So it is more closer to the West than it is away from the West. Now, as regard this nuclear, Japan going nuclear, I still hold my bet, even though there are people who think that Japan will go nuclear soon. However, even though the constituencies or the number of people support within Japan is increasing towards going nuclear, there is sizable number of people, including Kishida, and because he comes from Hiroshima, he will not take a position where he would antagonize his own constituency. If Kishida adopts a policy that will lead Japan to go nuclear, he's likely to lose his own seat from Hiroshima. So at least Kishida, which is there, he's not going to take that position. Yes, Japan, there is a debate within Japan to tweak this 3 nuclear principle and to make it 2.5. That means in case there is a crisis, there is an attack, there is a war in the region, or a war with Japan and some other country, then the nuclear capable, nuclear capable the vessels and or what you say, US nuclear nuclear weapon could be shared with Japan till there is a war. So they are in favor of introducing not all, but a consensus or a kind of debate is going on in Japan to let Japan host US nuclear weapon on its territory or on its water, at least till there is a war in the region. The moment war gets over, the nuclear Japan should go back to three non-nuclear principle. So for the interim period, Japan should tweak its policy and turn this three nuclear principle into 2.5. But once the war is over, Japan should go back to again three nuclear principles. So that kind of debate is there, but I don't see Japan is going to go nuclear in the immediate future or recent future.
Thank you, Shamshad. I think we had covered the list of questions that was put on the chat box. What is the consensus among the audience? Is anyone wanting to ask any more questions? Alka has raised her hands. Alka, Dr. Acharya, please come in.
Yeah, thanks. I thought I might as well take advantage of Shamshad being here.
Yes, ma'am. I'm keen to hear from you and probably answer.
So obviously my question is going to be from the vantage point of China-Japan relations, okay? And I was reading a recent survey of opinion, okay, within Japan, which said that currently the opinion regarding China is the lowest ever in Japan, that there is the lowest ever I could get, but definitely there is a great deal of apprehensions and negativity about China in Japan. Now, on the one hand, one would assume that if there is that kind of a national feeling, even if there are pockets which don't agree, but by and large, if we are saying broadly that you have this anti-Japanese sentiment, does it not translate into a positive support for the Prime Minister? Because from what I gathered from the discussion, that he is facing unprecedented challenges, opposition within the party, this, that. Does this national sentiment against China, I mean, to what extent does it work as an input in the political system, particularly vis-a-vis Japan's relations with China, in the current context? How does it operate? What does it even mean that it's a low kind of a sentiment in Japan?
Okay, ma'am. I think you are referring to the Genron survey that the Japanese and Chinese think tanks conduct every year. And they ask this question to Japanese, how do you rate China? And same time, they ask Japanese to how do you rate China, and they ask Chinese how to rate Japan. So based on that, they assess that what is the public perception towards each other. However, when it comes to the China school of thought, in Japan, there is still substantial China people who they know that China is a threat. However, they cannot do away with China also. So lots of economic interdependence. People say that economic interdependence does not work, but if you are as I have been to Japan various times, I see lots of marriages are still taking place. I was in Waseda University. The seminar I was attending of my host, more number of Chinese were there as a student than Japanese. So, and as in Japan, when the Japanese universities lack, there's because of what you say, aging society, less number of schools are the schools are, and the colleges are, universities are getting shut or merged to survive. There's a lot of Chinese who are coming to Japan, and then lots of marriages are still taking place between these two countries. So sometimes I feel puzzled that on the one hand there is some kind of misperception or hatred towards China in Japan, but again on the surface, on the ground, I see lots of Chinese coming to Japan, and Waseda University is very happy. They undertake every year some trip to lure, I can say, the Chinese students, and some of the Japanese universities are thriving just because of just because of Chinese students. So when it comes to the political support, I don't think the prime ministers or anyone, even Abe tried his best in his speeches. He used to say that on the one hand he was adopting the confrontationist policies towards China, but he was saying that our doors are still open for dialogue with China. And so the present prime minister also knows that there's a limitation that he has. So it does not translate into a kind of political support to the prime minister or the prime minister, any prime minister, except for this Yasukuni does not, Yasukuni Shrine does not incite the public sentiment vis-a-vis China or against China in Japan. So that the negative feeling towards China within Japan would not result to a kind of a boon for a prime minister domestically, because A, they are not trying, B, it is not that substantial, you can say.
Alka?
Yeah, okay. It is a tricky kind of a relationship in any case.
Yeah, but this whole thing of economic and economic diplomacy versus political diplomacy, is that disconnect that Japan followed and was able to survive. I think that is coming to an end now, because larger question of supply chain resilience, etc., is pushing various options for Japan to move actually out of it. Whereas again, the business is not happy. And as Shamshad said, the soft power is on a different equation when it comes to higher education, essentially, where there's an influx of Chinese students. So it's the that disconnected way of looking at these things, where I think not any longer possible for Japan, given the situation of the world politics. However, they will try to, I think, soft toe these things as much as possible, not to disrupt other aspects of their economy. It's a very, as you said, a very tricky situation to be in for Japan at the moment.
Well, thanks then, I think.
Yeah,
whether there are any more questions.
Thanks to everyone who's out here. And it was very engaging time that we had with Dr. Shamshad, who had joined us all the way from Dubai. Thank you, Shamshad. I think you had a fairly good set of questions, and you must be happy going back.
From my part, I thank all the participants as well as those who posed very good questions. I would reflect upon some of the questions I might not have dealt properly, but it will reflect somewhere in my writing. Thank you very much for giving food for thought.
And thank you, Akshay, for, I think, hosting this as from the ICS platform. Over to you, if in case you need to make any announcements.
Thank you, ma'am. I seek your permission to formally bring it into today's session. With this, we shall wrap today's session. We thank Dr. Khan and Professor Roy Chaudhary for gracing the session with their presence and for giving us their precious time. The video of today's discussion shall be available on the ICS's YouTube channel. We would also like to invite you to next week's seminar titled Literary Activism in China in the 1980s and 1990s. The ICS conducts seminars every Wednesday Further information regarding the topic can be found on the ICS website. You may also subscribe to our newsletter